Brilliant helps you see math in a new way. From the Pythagorean theorem to the area of a circle.
Real Housewives on it. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Nowadays, there are many more. Hi, I'm Craig, and this is Crash Course Government and Politics, and today we're going to try to untangle the mess that is the American political campaign. One of the things about the American political system that often confuses people who don't live in America is the way that our politicians run for office. There are two aspects in particular that stand out about American political campaigns: their length and their expense. We're going to look at both of these today, and we'll see that they're related, but before we do, we need to answer a burning question. Why do we need political campaigns anyway? If you ask 100 people about the reason why we have political campaigns, you'll get, well, not 100, but at least more than one answer. And you might work for Family Feud. Probably the best answer to this question, though, is that we have political campaigns to provide voters with the information they need to choose a candidate to represent them. So how do political campaigns provide information? And what is a political campaign anyway? Let's go to the thought bubble. A campaign is an organized drive on the part of a candidate to get elected to an office. It's also the way we refer to the organization itself. For example, in 2012, we had the Obama campaign and the Romney campaign, and each consisted of a campaign organization made up of thousands of staffers and volunteers in all of their activities. Most campaigns are temporary, geared towards an election, although both parties do have permanent professional campaign organizations. At the top level are the national committees, the DNC and the RNC. Can you guess what they stand for? These organizations can coordinate all national level campaigns, especially those for president. Each House of Congress also has a Republican and a Democratic campaign committee. The individual Senate and congressional committees are headed up by sitting members of the Senate and the House. Because these committees give money to candidates, their leaders are very popular. I find that I'm popular when I make it rain at parties. Campaigns provide information in a number of ways. The main thing they do is communicate with the public, usually through the media, which we'll discuss in greater depth in future episodes. The mainstay of political campaigns is the organized event where candidates can present information about themselves and their policies directly to voters through speeches. These are usually known as stump speeches, although only rarely these days do candidates actually speak on stumps. They have podiums and stages now. In addition to these events, candidates present information by appearing on the TV, in debates, at town meetings, and in impromptu photo opportunities. They like to appear with military hardware too, although sometimes this can backfire, as in the case of Michael Dukakis in 1988. Campaigns can spread their messages through direct mail, press releases, news coverage, and through advertisements, often on the TV, which is like the internet, only less interactive and has a lot of Real Housewives on it. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Nowadays, there are many more ways that candidates can reach out to voters. One way is through email. If you've ever given money to a candidate or a campaign, you can expect emails in ever-increasing numbers as election day approaches. And we all love that. Candidates now take to Twitter to blast out information, and individual candidates and their campaigns often have Facebook pages. There are even campaign ads made specifically for YouTube, although how their advertising algorithm works is beyond me. It's weird to get a campaign ad for the Michigan Senate if you don't live in Michigan. One other way that campaigns communicate information is through raising money. Of course, they need money to pay for all the campaign ribbons and buttons and PA systems and folding chairs and tour buses and stump speeches and axes to chop down trees so they have stumps to speak on. These things ain't cheap. Even more expensive are advertisements on the TV. A sitting president has an advantage here in that he can usually get on TV whenever he wants, and you will have a chance to clarify his positions in the State of the Union address. But even he has to spend money on ads. And raising money is another way to present voters with information, because campaign solicitations usually come with some policy piece attached to them. Almost every solicitation you get will be somewhat targeted to one of your interests and tell you, or try to tell you, where the candidate asking for your money stands on that issue. So you may have gotten a campaign solicitation and wondered, hey, why do you need my money? The unhelpful answer is that they need your money because campaigns are expensive. But then you might ask, why are they so expensive? Good question. Campaigns are expensive because they're huge, especially presidential campaigns. They need to reach 220 million people of voting age. Another reason they're expensive is because they're super long. Democrat and Republican candidates raise money, give speeches, and create political action committees years before the election. It's ridiculous. I blame the eagle. Campaigns are also expensive because Americans expect them to be personal, and this takes time and money. We like to see our candidates in person and have them show up in small towns in Iowa and New Hampshire, even though those states don't matter all that much in the grand electoral picture. Another reason campaigns are so expensive is that they rely increasingly on the TV and other visual media that cost a lot of money to produce. Gone are the days when William McKinley could sit on his porch in Ohio and have reporters come to him. Nowadays, even when candidates get free exposure by appearing on nightly comedy shows like The Daily Show, it still costs the campaign in terms of time, travel, and probably wardrobe and makeup so that they can look as good as I do. No makeup. Minimal wardrobe, no pants. Sorry, Stan. How expensive are campaigns anyway? Vary. In the 2008 presidential campaign, both candidates together spent $3 billion. In 2012, the candidates spent about $1 billion each, and outside groups spent a further $4 billion. And congressional elections weren't much cheaper, except when you consider that there were a lot more of them. Combined congressional races in 2008 cost about $1 billion. All the money that gets spent on campaigns leads us inevitably to campaign finance rules, which were set up by Congress after 1970 and refined by the courts. We have campaign finance legislation because all that money pouring into campaigns sure looks like it raises the potential for corruption. Whether or not an individual's campaign contributions can sway a congressman's vote is highly debatable, but it certainly gives the appearance of impropriety when a congressman who receives millions of dollars from the oil industry then works hard to weaken regulations on oil companies so that they can make more.
Okay, hi everyone. So you can watch this video series on your own just to show you that it's available, and I'll try to remember to put the YouTube link on the file that I post on the Cyber Campus. So let's go to the Cyber Campus, so I don't forget to do that as well. And we'll go to the American Political Institutions and go to Attendance and click on, here we are in still week 11, and go to Smart Attendance, and your number is 549. 549 is your Smart Attendance number. So we go to chatting and put in 549, 549. There you go. Here's your Smart Attendance number. And if somebody comes late, please share that number with them. All right, so so let's then go back to the lesson plan for today, and let's see, I have to find lesson plan, and what did I do with the lesson plan? Let me close. I think there it is. No, that's not it. That's the notes. But I just want to make sure I have the lesson plan open to remind you that there is a debate, and let's. My drive, and see, somebody signed up on Wednesday, and no, nobody signed up for debate for Wednesday. But next week we have Juliet and Kim Bong-Kyu and later on. But of course, if you're running out of time here, if you haven't signed up for a debate, you might want to do that pretty soon here, because you can see we have time here for Wednesday, and then we get to the end of the semester. So so we'll have a in-class debate like we've typically been having, and I think you can see that. Let me make sure that you can see that, and because I'm not certain, the share screen is always sharing the screen. So there you can see, and so back to the lesson plan, and here, make sure again, I have to keep making sure I do this so that we don't. How you sign up for the debate? Well, it's a Google share file, kiddo. It's a share file, so you should be able to go into that file and you can type into it. You can type your own name. It's Google shared file, so anybody can write on it. That I sent the link to. So I sent you the link. If you can't sign up for some reason, just send me an email and I'll write your name in for you. Okay. We're trying to be high tech and use all these cool technologies that we forced to use during the pandemic. And of course, as I mentioned, we're going back to class meetings on Wednesday. So the next class will all be together in the class. You all be invited, although of course we'll still also Zoom broadcast the debate, the class, because some students are not here for various reasons. But we want to. Even if we go back to face-to-face meetings, we want to use the lessons learned from the pandemic to get even more benefit from this educational opportunities that are presented. So, so including using the Google shared files and the like in Cyber Campus and so on. And that's why I like to record these class sessions, so that I can put the recording links on the Cyber Campus so people can watch them again if they want to. So anyway, let's go back then to the lesson plan, and let's see here. So yeah, so to South Koreans, Joe Biden will likely be reelected in 2024, and if that happens, that may continue the policies of the Biden administration, obviously, but I'm not so certain that we can just assume he's going to win, because more and more people are expecting that we might well have economic difficulties. The government of the United States is attempting to, in the form of the Federal Reserve, to try to lessen the inflation, which is high everywhere, but it's high in the United States and also in Europe at the highest rates it's been in 40 years. When I remember in the late 1970s, it's been a long time since we had inflation of between 8 and 9%. I was in high school when that happened, and that was driven down in the early 1980s when the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States drastically raised interest rates, and the United States went to its deepest economic recession since the Great Depression in the 1930s. I remember many people I knew moving away from Ohio to go to Florida and California and Arizona to get jobs because those economies in the South have always been doing better than the economies in the North since the end of the Second World War. And because they couldn't get jobs in Ohio or they couldn't get jobs in their town. And that was the deepest economic downturn since the Great Depression until the global financial crisis in 2008. And unemployment reached over 10%. Interest rates were like 21%, and that was how inflation was broken. And there's a question: does that have to happen again? Will there have to be a recession in order to stop the cycle of inflation continuing and becoming an expectation to people's minds? And if it becomes an expectation that is institutionalized in people's minds, then it's going to reinforce itself. That if I know that, well, I better buy a car now because I know next year will be more expensive. So buy it now, buy everything now, buy it now. Because if I wait, it's going to be more expensive. And that's going to create a self-reinforcing cycle for inflation. So that's the supposed danger, that you have to bring this under control as rapidly as possible, including perhaps raising interest rates so high that the economy contracts. And if that happens, it won't happen this year, but it may happen next year going into 2024 when the presidential campaign begins. And since, like we talked about in previous class, right, you can say, well, we all know that, this is all due to economic downturns and dealing with the legacy of the pandemic and so on. Always keep this paragraph in mind that we talked about in a previous class, right? That make sure you can see that you and I are here. We pay close attention to politics. We come and study in a foreign country. We leave Switzerland or we leave France and we come to South Korea and choose to study here. We take a course in English with an American professor at the Catholic University of Korea. That means you are here. You and I are here. We are highly attentive and that we pay close attention to current events. But most of the population is down here. And all of the bad things that supposedly Donald Trump did, that he represents in terms of authoritarian populism, all of those topics we talked about in this class and the other classes, this is something they have no very little understanding or conceptualization of. They just blame the president for bad times and give credit to the president for good times. And if the economy goes into recession, lots of these people who know very little about the history of problems, how these problems emerged, what are the issues at stake, many of them are going to vote against Joe Biden and for Donald Trump if he runs for re-election. And so, I can't predict with 100%, obviously with a great degree of certainty what will happen, but this is really important in terms of us up here in our study of these topics and the dangers that we see in the United States and around the world regarding authoritarian populism and nationalism. So that's why we always want to keep that in mind, that the people that write these chapters in your book, Return to Normalcy, they're up here as well. They're up here. They're writing for people that are up here. This book that you're reading, Return to Normalcy, is not going to become a bestseller. There's not going to be a Hollywood superhero film made about it. It's a very limited scientific market of people who follow these affairs. But these people, if they bother to vote, they're going to vote on what they understand the condition of the country is in. And the economy, even if they themselves are not suffering, if they think that they were in a crisis of some sort because there's inflation, or we were humiliated in Afghanistan, we lost a war in Afghanistan. Joe Biden bad. Joe Biden bad. He was president when we lost. He bad. And of course, his competitors his political adversaries, they know everything that we're talking about in this class. They know about this, this study of American voters. They know everything that we talk about. And they are paid to help their clients, the people that hire them, win the next election. And so they will, of course, blame Joe Biden for the defeat of the United States in Afghanistan. And they will blame Joe Biden for the high inflation. And they will blame Joe Biden for immigration and they won't talk about the context. They're not going to focus on 100 years of American policy towards Latin America that made those states weak and corrupt. They don't, these people up here will talk about those issues. So we'll come back to this a little bit later, but I want to make sure that we get to the notes. And so there's a sense of urgency, obviously, in these notes in terms of what are we supposed to learn from this in terms of the, I think, is that it? No, sorry, one more. I have different files open here, so I have to find the right one here. I think it's this one. Okay, so how did Joe Biden beat Donald Trump? And again, I mean, many of you might think Donald Trump bad. He's a terrible, terrible bad. He didn't win in 2016, and we can always say, what if, what if, what if? But again, I keep repeating what I said earlier. If the pandemic had not arrived, I'm not certain that Donald Trump would have lost. He probably would have won. I mean, the people were predicting these. Even if the Democrats find the best candidate they can among all those 20 individuals that decided they were running for president on the Democratic Party ticket, that Joe Biden would not have beat Donald Trump, because most voters in America, they don't care about NATO. Most voters in the United States have difficulty finding European countries on a map. So, all right, so let's go back and talk about chapter 3. And this is part of the Sabato Center for the Study of Politics at the University of Virginia. So Biden, he's an old man. I mean, I just assumed, that when he didn't run for election in 2016, he decided not to run for the Democratic Party nomination because Barack Obama, the president, really didn't support him. Barack Obama was more support towards Hillary Clinton. He was too old. He's done. Although he'd run in the early 1980s and he'd run a number of times and was defeated, that he was done. But he was able to come back and win, this old man who was 78 when he started the presidency and will be 82 at the end of his first term. And Biden portrayed himself as electable against Donald Trump. And again, this experience of nominating somebody, first you nominate Barack Obama, who portrayed himself as an African-American, even though, yeah, he's technically African-American, but he's not. You know who Barack Obama's father was? You don't know? He was a college student from a royalty in Kenya, from a tribal or aristocracy in Kenya. So his father was an aristocrat in a tribe in Kenya. And he was sent to go study at an American university, I think at the University of Kansas. So his father was an African, not an American, who came to study in the United States and met his mother, a white woman who was a PhD student, getting her PhD in anthropology at the University of Kansas. So why is that important? Because Barack Obama is not a descendant of American slaves. He's not a descendant of enslaved Black people. And why is that important? Because enslaved Americans, that was an incredibly traumatic experience. And trauma is intergenerational. And it's passed down from parents to children. And it's also institutionalized in American society that Black people, we talk about Jim Crow, segregation, but Black people are a joke, Jim Crow. And the entire society's laws and policies, not by any kind of conspiracy or plan, are oriented around the foundation of America upon expropriating the land and resources from the people already here and pushing them out, and bringing over enslaved people from Africa, and building a society around those two fundamentally necessary acts to create the prosperity that became the United States, and creating institutions to enforce it, and creating a worldview in people's self-identity in the construction of their symbolic meaning of reality to feel good about that. Like, Africans, they're so backward and primitive, we're doing them a favor if we bring them from Africa. I mean, those people are so, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And America, it's a society descended from Europeans. And if you're not European, you're at best privileged to be among Europeans, white people. So Barack Obama doesn't come from that family background that's inherited 400 years of the legacy of slavery and then Jim Crow. But he still can portray himself as African American. You can be proud of him as African American. And that's, I'm not saying it's bad, it's wrong. Certainly to make people feel proud about being African, which is an important part of empowerment, right? If you want to address social injustices, people have to believe that they deserve dignity. And if you can feel proud of yourself as an African American by Barack Obama becoming an elected president of the United States, that's fine. But for many Americans, they reacted negatively against that. That Barack Obama, they claimed, they didn't say they hate black people. What they would say is that he's privately, he's a socialist. And socialism is against the American creed, against the American classical liberal ideology that made America great. Free market, minimal government intervention. Socialists, they want government intervention. They want to reconstruct society, engage in social engineering, and recreate America in the way that these secular humanist, educated college people and their professors want to create. And it goes even more extreme, the way Donald Trump spread the gossip lie that Barack Hussein Obama, he wasn't born in the United States. He's not really American. Barack Hussein Obama? I mean, he's got a Muslim-sounding name. He's not really American. He's not really American. And all of those, particularly white people, who suspected, they didn't like or suspected Barack Obama as a threat to their identity and their values, they found Donald Trump as a person to articulate and legitimate and make acceptable the birther conspiracy that he wasn't really born in America. And according to the Constitution of the United States, a person can only become president if they were born an American citizen. You can't immigrate to the United States like Arnold Schwarzenegger and become president of the United States because he was not born in the United States, even though he's an American citizen, according to the US Constitution. And that was used later in 2020 against Kamala Harris. Kamala? What kind of name is that? Kamala? Harris sounds really English, right? But again, it's mentioned later in the book, the same birther conspiracy. Kamala Harris is not really American. She's Indian, Jamaican, black. And then of course, after Barack Obama was president, the first woman to win the Democratic Party nomination to become president is Hillary Clinton. And then America's going to make another step into the new era of electing a woman president, a female president, and she loses. Partly in reaction to Barack Obama and somehow Hillary Clinton being the continuation of the undermining of traditional American values in America. That if Hillary Clinton's elected, she's going to undermine the status of men. She's going to institutionalize more policies that undermine a male identity and traditional male values as articulated in churches, by ministers and priests. And of course, she did win almost 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, but she still lost the election. And so To jump ahead to 2020, Biden, after this perceived threat to American democracy, was president for 4 years. Biden portrayed himself as the most electable, that he was an old white man with an American, Biden sounds really Anglo-Saxon to me, right? Name, familiar, been around forever in the US Senate for 36 years. Since the early 1970s, he's been a senator. And he was Barack Obama's vice president. So he would appeal to many white people, many particularly working class people, because he's like one of the first president in decades not to have a college degree from an Ivy League institution. He didn't go to Harvard. He didn't go to Yale. He graduated from, I think, the University of Delaware. He went to a state university for college. He claimed his father was a working class union member, and he was vice president to the first African American president. And all of these together would make him, in the view of the Democrats, they should choose him because defeating Donald Trump was the overwhelming priority. So everything else was secondary. We have to find somebody to get him out, get Donald Trump out. And Bernie Sanders is not going to do it. Elizabeth Warren is not going to do it. Pete Buttigieg is not going to do it. Joe Biden can potentially do it. But again, he's Mr. Moderate. He's Mr. Middle of the road. He's Mr. Winning elections. He's Mr. being secure and making white people feel secure and safe in their position in society. And in other words, he doesn't get people excited. Who gets people excited? Well, on the right, Donald Trump gets people excited. But on the left, people like Bernie Sanders get people excited with their plans for universal medical care like you have in Korea and in European countries. We should do that in America. I know it doesn't sound radical to you, but to many Americans, that sounds pretty far right wing, left wing. We're going to commit to shifting the economy to renewable energy sources. We're going to, these left wing activists are the source of energy in political campaigns. These are people that volunteer, that spend time appealing to voters, going around to people and asking them to support the nominee for president. They're the ones that get on the phone and make phone calls and volunteer. And that means you need those activists. You need those people who are enthusiasts. And Joe Biden is not going to make people enthusiastic just on the basis of his history. And he could maybe get them motivated if defeating Donald Trump was the most important factor. And Bernie Sanders did when he was the icon of the left socialists in America. He said, yes, we have to do whatever it takes, my followers. We have to do whatever it takes to get Donald Trump out. But of course, I'm saying that some people who are more leftist in their orientation might well argue that, no, you know what? It doesn't really make any difference. That's what some people do say, that Joe Biden, Barack Obama, they don't really change American policy. Maybe it would be better if we did have a cataclysmic disaster. Let somebody like Donald Trump get into office and create such a horrible situation for Americans in the world that finally Americans will wake up. Then finally we can begin to address the problems that we really face in America and the world. But that's pretty apocalyptic. I mean, that's a point that Raymond Aron and other theorists have noted, that the situation can always get worse. And so you can say, well, they're not going to campaign for Donald Trump, but what they could do is just basically stay home, not campaign, maybe not even vote. Like, it doesn't matter. Same old, same old. Before Biden's success, the prevalent assumption was that, it was going to be Joe Biden. He was an old man. Yeah, Bernie Sanders was old, but Bernie Sanders was something new, fresh. Before Biden's success, a prevalent assumption was that the activist energy within the Democratic Party, critically important for successful political campaign lay with the leftists. And again, even Sanders, he's been saying that he's not necessarily sure that he won't run for president again himself in 2024, even though he's as old as Joe Biden. But again, this concern that we got to get people to vote who typically are less likely to vote, young people and minorities. They are, relatively speaking, less frequently voting. When you get to be my age, more and more people my age, they tend to vote. But when people in their 20s, they're less likely to vote, not to mention people that are poor. We have to get those people to vote. And so that's an overwhelming consideration today, that even as Joe Biden is not able to do what he promised he would try to do in the 2020 presidential campaign in terms of getting laws passed through Congress, he's still trying to keep those activists enthusiastic, or at least willing to fight for his getting reelected. So that's, we'll have a test of this for the midterm election that will happen in November of this year, because if the Republicans take power in the Congress, Joe Biden will not be able to pass anything in terms of new laws and legislation through the Congress. And then he'll look even more ineffective in 2024. On the other hand, we see, as we've been talking about, how the U.S. Supreme Court has is preparing to overturn Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion. Will this get young people, particularly women, but also young people in general, and marginalized people to vote in November? I think, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's going to work. I think this is not, we knew this was coming. Maybe you and I knew it was coming, but the Supreme Court was going to overrule Roe versus Wade. What about the mass of the population down here? How will they respond to Roe versus Wade being overturned? What is that? Did I didn't open it up. How will those people in the pyramid respond? Yeah. How will these people respond down here? That's the big question. These people are the ones that are less likely to vote. We knew this was coming, that Roe versus Wade was in danger. But how are these people going to respond when, oh my God, they really did make it illegal in Ohio to get an abortion? And how much of that is going to change the outcome of the election otherwise in November? As I told you, lots of Democrats in the Congress are retiring because they don't expect that they're going to hold control of the majority after the November elections, which it tells me that they think it's not going to stop the Republicans from taking control of the Congress, at least one house of the Congress in November. So, Bernie Sanders won 43% of the vote. Senator Sanders won 43% of the vote in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, who then lost to Trump. People on the left claim that the establishment of the Democratic Party was hostile to Bernie Sanders, that they worked against Bernie Sanders, just the bureaucrats in the Democratic Party, because they saw Sanders as too radical. And even she made statements after she lost. People wondered, why Hillary Clinton, why didn't you select Bernie Sanders as your vice presidential candidate to run with you in 2016? Instead, she selected a senator from Virginia who most Americans had never met, but didn't know, nice guy, but unknown. Why didn't you select him? He was the colorful, energetic campaign, and would that have helped her win? But we don't know. But she did make comments about how he, as a senator, wasn't able to really get anything done in the U.S. Senate. He never sponsored any legislation, did the hard work of writing out policy proposals is hundreds of pages long, and then taking it to the Congress, and then having the Congress, the committees and debate and work with other Republicans and to get it amended and changed to push this through, to get something done through the Congress. He never did it. All he does is, I stand for the working class interests, or interest for all. He amends. He makes proposals for amendments to legislation. In other words, somebody else does all the work and then submits the proposed bill to the Congress, and he makes suggestions for changes. But he never did the hard work of getting draft legislation from beginning to end through the Congress. He just is a blowhard, she said. She said nobody likes him in the Congress. I mean, I could find the speech. It's probably on YouTube where she made this statement. Like, what? I was wondering, this is after the election. Why is she saying this now? And I think it's because she lost in 2016, and people said, why didn't you select him to be your vice president? He would have won and kept Trump out. And she said, nobody in the Congress likes him. He can't work with anybody. He just gets up there and, Medicare for all. Yeah, Tim Kaine. She chose Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia to be her running mate. Nobody outside of Virginia knew. Who's this guy, Tim Kaine? But everybody knew him. And many of the people that voted for Sanders then voted for Trump. Powerful Democratic politicians have been defeated in Democratic primary elections. She beat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was a young leftist, avowed socialist, who beat a prominent Democratic incumbent to become a congressional representative for the city of New York. So AOC, she's referred to. She's Puerto Rican American. She's young. She's in her 20s. She's part of the squad of other young, progressive, leftist congresspeople. She beat a long-term Democratic congressman to win the primary election to become the candidate to win and then win in this congressional seat for New York City. But Biden positioned himself as a centrist. That is, he's the median typical American Democratic Party voter. He's not like AOC. He's not like the Bernie Sanders. In this way, Biden made voting for him as easily as possible for as wide as possible group of Democratic Party voters. But again, still, it's a challenge for him. Just on an individual level, I come from working class white background in Ohio, and I know many people in my family background, they voted for Trump. And they voted for Trump because they think that Joe Biden represents the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is serving the interests of blacks and Hispanics, primarily. They won't come out and tell me that. But I just get this sense that even though Biden's an old white man, he represents forces that challenge what they believe to be the true American values that made America a great, powerful country. And I say, what about the women in my family? Are they going to vote Democrat because Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned? I talked to one person, she said, well, people will still find a way to get an abortion. It's not going to be illegal in Pennsylvania. You just go to Pennsylvania to get an abortion if you need one. It's not worth voting Democrat just to try to make abortion legal everywhere in the US. And people with money, they've always found a way to get an abortion, just like they did here in South Korea. Abortion was illegal until like a year or two ago here in South Korea, but it was very common. So I'm not too optimistic. So Biden thereby aimed to appear both not too left and not too right, a political Goldilocks zone. You know what Goldilocks is? You don't know Goldilocks? You don't know the American fable that they tell the children about Goldilocks and the Three Bears? Goldilocks, it must be from the Brothers Grimm, a German fairy tale, right? The Goldilocks goes to a house and she breaks into the house and she starts eating their food and she eats a bowl of porridge. This bowl of porridge is too hot. This bowl of porridge is too cold. Oh, this bowl of porridge is just right. You know the Goldilocks? That's the Goldilocks zone. Joe Biden's not too left, not too right. He's just right. This boring old white man. Professional, the ultimate professional politician. And just to show, for example, Biden more liberal than X percentage of senators. So, you know, there's 100% senators in the US, right? So you look at Biden's votes in the 95th Congress, 100th Congress, 110th Congress. This is going back to the, you know, over 30 years ago, that he is, you know, the Republicans are all here. He's just a bit more liberal than the Republicans in his voting in the Senate. He's the not too left, not too right senator. You know, keep in mind, a lot of people up in that top of the pyramid, that 1 to 5% saying, Trump is a fascist. He's dangerous. Oh my God. If he gets reelected, oh my God. I mean, so, you know, maybe they're right, given what happened on January 6, 2001, encouraging the people to attack US Congress. So this is considered to be high stakes politics. Who are we going to find that can beat Trump? And in response to Biden's campaign, the more progressive candidates, in part to generate enthusiasm on Democrats, took positions favoring reparations for slavery and for gun control, which made them appear too liberal for the media Democrat value. I mean, reparations for slavery? We're going to tax people in America and give the money to Black people because of the injustice done to them or their ancestors. White people are going to go, what the F are you talking about? I had nothing to do with slavery. You're going to tax me and give it to Black people because of something that happened 150 years ago? Or gun control. Again, what was it? We had 102 or 192 mass shootings in the United States this year. And this one yesterday, a white man, white boy, 18, killed 10 Black people. No, 10 people, 8 of them Black, at a store in Buffalo, New York. And we can't control gun violence in the US because it's become identified with traditional American values, right? That the cowboy, you got to defend yourself against the savages, the Indians, and you might have to put down the Blacks if they rise up against their owners. The gun, you can't take away my gun. We're only free, truly free, if we are able to defend ourselves by having weapons. By the ideological centrist niche and dominated early. It was a huge advantage in the field of 27 Democratic candidates for president. Keep in mind, again, if Biden runs for re-election, which he will, unless something happens to him, and Trump runs, there won't be a big controversial primary. It'll be Trump versus Biden again. And I think, you know, Trump will definitely run. He's such a narcissistic person. I'm not judging him. I mean, he'll run, and Biden will run. So there won't be this controversial combative primary that we had in 2020. Biden also made sure that he publicly picked the correct high-profile public friends by being as close to Barack Obama as possible. He portrayed himself as building on the legacy of Obama's presidency. Keep in mind, it was Black voters that saved his political campaign. In the beginning of the Democratic primary in Iowa, in Nevada, in New Hampshire, Biden lost all 3 of them. The first 3 big primary events, he lost in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. And what saved him? Black voters in South Carolina. And he knows it, and we all know it. 44% of voters who stated that building on Obama's legacy was important voted for Biden. No other Democratic candidate gained more than 50% of voters from this group. Polling research has shown that a candidate who aligned himself with Obama became more popular among Black voters. So Biden aligned himself with Black voters and Obama's superfans, two groups that significantly overlapped. Electability, that is the ability to defeat Trump, was more important in issues than issue positions consistently according to a number of public opinion poll research studies. So Biden exploited this advantage in the primary campaign. For example, he put his campaign headquarters in Philadelphia, the largest city in the swing state of Pennsylvania. Again, Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 over Hillary Clinton by just 44,000 votes and got all, 25 electoral college votes in Pennsylvania. Biden emphasized his childhood growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, a blue-collar city where a significant shift happened from supporting Obama to supporting Trump in 2016. So these post-industrial cities that lost their steel factories, their manufacturing factories, because they couldn't compete with imports from Mexico and China. Biden distanced himself in the debates from progressive, that is leftist ideas, unpopular with median Democratic voters. Median means most typical or most common, not majority, including Medicare for all, that's what Bernie Sanders is promoting, universal health care, and the Green New Deal, proposed by AOC and supported by Sanders as well. So, again, this is all dry. Interesting to keep in mind as we think about what will happen in 2024. So it lasted this, the invisible primary before the Iowa events in early February 2020. This lasted from June 2019 to February 2020. And the media, any sign of weakness among the candidates is targeted by the media. And of course, the media is changing now as well because of social media and the like. So you see polling trends, 2020 Democratic primary national polling trends. So Elizabeth Warren, senator from Massachusetts, Harvard professor, originally from Oklahoma, she did well, came close to approaching Biden. So Harris had some good performance until she wasn't able to continue with her campaign effectively for a number of different reasons. And so Biden was consistently up here. Biden had some comparative weaknesses. One, he was not a strong debater. He doesn't think as quickly on his feet as other people. He has a tendency to say too much or say the wrong thing and sort of dismiss it by being the, like he's just a typical crazy kind, not crazy, but friendly kind of uncle figure who might make mistakes, but you're not supposed to take them too seriously. The Biden campaign has had to deal with that. And of course, the Trump campaign claims that he's old and becoming senile. Although Donald Trump is just a year younger than him, a year or two younger. His campaign speeches were not the most inspiring. The media viewed him as boring because he had been in the US Senate for 36 years and then served as vice president for 8 years under Obama, so he's not new and interesting. That's 44 years he's been in the national public view. Biden was challenged by Warren and Harris in public opinion polling, but they fell away. Kamala Harris positioned herself as senator from California as someone who could appeal to different constituencies. And so, all of these, Wikipedia is nice, although Wikipedia can be exploited because people, Wikipedia is a go-to source of information. So you can tell that, of course, the Kamala Harris campaign certainly has devoted resources. You have to have a nice Wikipedia page, right? And it's created by viewers. So, of course, there's hopes that she will run as a relatively young person, younger than me. She's 2 years younger than me. that she might run for president at some point again. So here you can see the nice little Wikipedia page somebody set up for her. This is cool. You know, she's claims she's black. She's lighter skinned than Barack Obama was, right? That she's Jamaican, Caribbean, and her mother was Indian. So she's Asian American and African American and a woman and kind of young. This is politics is all about marketing. You know? Remember, always keep in mind that pyramid. How are you going to people? Well, I guess I have to vote. Oh, I didn't read the newspaper in the last week or two. I don't know who to vote for. Oh, I like her, Kamala Harris. Yay! I'm going to vote for her. Okay, I got to go back to work now. Who's playing? Who's playing football tonight? Oh, I got to go pick up the kids at the kindergarten. They don't think about politics the way we do all the time, all day. No, that's not the right one. Sorry. So Harris attempted to knock Biden out of the race by attacking Biden's record on race in American public school desegregation efforts in the 1970s during the public debate. You know, Biden, over his long career, he made some nice comments about American senators he worked with in the Senate, particularly when he started in the 70s, who had been from the South and favored segregation, didn't want to desegregate the public schools, that wanted to keep separate schools for black and whites. He made some comments about James Eastland, who was senator, I think, from North Carolina. Let's see here, how this person from Mississippi, sorry, he served from from the 40s until 78. So that's, 50 years, almost, well, no, 35 years he served. He was a segregationist. He fought against desegregation. He fought against the civil rights legislation passed in the 1960s. And Joe Biden, was a senator, became a senator in the early 1970s while he was there. And he made some nice comments about how these people, you could still work with them. They would still compromise. They were respectful of each other. And Kamala Harris attacked him in a debate and claiming that Joe Biden should not have made such statements about these people, that they were segregationists. And let me see, I gotta go back to the notes. And Kamala Harris attacked Joe Biden in a debate, one of the many debates that were held on television. And Joe Biden was kind of shocked that claiming that Joe Biden should not be talking nicely about these people, that Kamala Harris benefited from desegregation of public schools, that she was one of the first, quote unquote, black children to go to a white school as a consequence of desegregation. I remember, in the 1970s when I was in school, I was living in Stark County, in Northeast Ohio. So we would still pick up Cleveland radio from the broadcasting radio stations. I would listen to the Cleveland radio stations. WGAR was one I used to listen to. In the 1970s, federal judge in the U.S. federal court system with jurisdiction over Cleveland, Ohio, was trying to make the Cleveland school system desegregated schools to bus children from black schools to white schools and from white schools to black schools. And the resistance and the fighting and the hostilities went on for weeks and months and years as the federal judge, I think his name was Barbuto, he was demanding that the school system present a plan for desegregation, and the hostility, the fighting, and sometimes the fighting was violent. In Boston, for example, in the city of Boston, there were riots against black people being brought in to go to schools because of the stereotype that black people are primitive, black people are savage. That, do you want your white daughter to go to school with black men? You know what they might do to her? Oh my God. Vicious fighting going on in the 1970s. Brown versus Board of Education was ruled by the Supreme Court in 1954. Desegregation didn't really progress through most of the school systems for another 20 years. It took 20 years after that Supreme Court decision, and it's been so difficult to desegregate these schools because of the stereotypes that people have of each other, particularly regarding marginalized people. I do not want my child to go to college with lots and lots of people of color. Not to college, to high school, with lots and lots of, because they have drugs. They use drugs. They might sell drugs. They might try to seduce my child. They might do something horrible. And so rather than even go to school, a lot of these people, white people, would leave the cities in what was called white flight. They would move to other places, like to my hometown, Louisville, to avoid having their child. And the claim was, of course, to desegregate the schools, you had to transport students by bus to different schools. And it's not fair that my child has to ride on a bus for half an hour to go to school every morning just so they can integrate the school system. So that was my childhood. And Joe Biden making nice comments about Eastland and other senators was a way by which Harris was appealing to this Democratic Party base, which is disproportionately non-white, right? And again, Biden, because he's not a quick speaker on his feet, when she was attacking him, he looked visibly confused on television. Biden then recovered from Harris' attack because Harris did not perform as well in the following public debate among the candidates, and she also did not have a clear policy disposition that would attract strong support. Biden just simply had to avoid making mistakes during the campaign. Right? He would win if he didn't make a terrible mistake. So he let Harris' weaknesses attract media attention by being careful to avoid making campaign mistakes. Elizabeth Warren, a white woman with a very English-sounding name, next challenged Biden, laying out detailed policy plans and appealing disproportionately to the white, college-educated base. But then the media began focusing on the absence of her policy plans regarding explanations for how she would pay for her detailed plans, including universal medical insurance, which looked a lot like Bernie Sanders' plan. Her explanations were not attractive to many. She openly advocated wealthy people paying more money in taxes. Again, Biden, all he did was took the centrist position against Warren and Sanders, avoid making catastrophic public gaffes, and he continued to raise enough campaign money to keep his campaign alive. And then phase 3 of the primary, Biden came closest to losing. As covered earlier, Biden performed terribly in the first 3 2020 primary season events, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and then he remarkably recovered in South Carolina. I mean, keep that in mind, right? To go back to that image here, if you just somewhat follow public events or public affairs, the current news reporting, you hear Pete Buttigieg won in Iowa, Bernie Sanders won in New Hampshire, Pete Buttigieg won in Nevada, winner, 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 winner. And you're thinking, okay, I got to figure out who I'm going to vote for. Oh yeah, who's this Pete Buttigieg? Well, maybe I'll vote for him, yeah. So that's why it's significant, those first few political campaigns, because you're trying to appeal to these voters who are not paying close attention, who are not studying these issues, but they know a winner versus a loser. And if you lose, you keep losing. You're more likely to lose again because you're a loser in the view of these people. That's why it's remarkable that Joe Biden loses the first 3 primary events in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, and then comes back in the 4th one and blows away everybody after that. Keep in mind, a person who'd run for president twice before and did miserably. In the 1980s, and then in 2008, he ran and he came in 4th or 5th and dropped out, and then Barack Obama chose him as his vice president candidate. I mean, that's not typical. That's the first time that I can recall in modern times where somebody has performed so badly in the first 3 events, didn't win one, and then comes back in the 4th event and devastates everybody else. No, that's not it. No. Is that it? Okay, yes. So and he won. You know, we talk about why do many white people suspect that, yeah, Joe Biden, we know obviously who's Joe Biden, but he represents interests that are somehow perceived as a threat or a challenge to American traditional values, because he won when the most powerful black politician in America, Jim Clyburn, the South Carolina representative in the Congress, endorsed Biden. Clyburn is famous civil rights social movement activist leader from the 1950s who later ran for and won a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. So he's particularly charismatic among African American voters. And he came out. And so he's the 3rd most powerful Democrat in the U.S. Congress, or the 3rd most powerful congressman because he's a Democrat, and the Democrats have a majority of the seats now. And Clyburn played a pivotal role in 2020 by endorsing Joe Biden 3 days before the South Carolina Democratic primary. And of course, Biden had to make certain promises to him, including, for example, that he would nominate a black woman to be on the U.S. Supreme Court, and that he has done that. So, defeating Donald Trump became the primary concern, and Biden won 48% of the votes in the Democratic primary in South Carolina, while Sanders won only 20%. And then phase 4, Biden rallies the party and wins the nomination. Biden then crushed his remaining opponents. As soon as Biden won in South Carolina, the Democratic Party coalesced around him. So, in conclusion, Biden took the most traveled path, but his run showcased how chaotic primaries can be. So he won because he avoided making unforced political mistakes. All right. So I wanted to do something a little more active in class today. And let me go back to the So trying to do a number of different things in the class, working with you to improve your English, for example. And if I were to give you an exam, which I'm not, you have your take-home paper, I would give the students a study guide. this study guide is something like this is what I did when I taught this class a few years ago. I would then select some questions from the study guide. So there's 20 questions here. And these 20 questions were taken from the advanced placement test that's given nationally in the US. So students who are in high school can start getting college credit for their knowledge of American politics by studying before they go to college so they can finish college earlier. It's called AP, Advanced Placement. And this advanced placement test is offered around the United States. And the textbook that we used in the first half of the course by O'Connor and Sabato, that was oriented towards students who were preparing to take the AP test, the advanced placement test. These questions are taken from the different national, for example, this is from April 2018, Advanced Placement Test for American Government and Politics. Just to give you a sense of how American students are tested regarding their basic knowledge of the American political system using that O'Connor and Sabato book. So like when I taught in 2006, 2007 at a school in, at a community college in Ohio. And I had a wide range of students, including high school students who were taking the class to prepare to take the advanced placement test to get some college credit before they actually went to college. And so these are the kind of questions that the students have to answer. So it says here, in a democracy, what the majority wants should influence public policy. The opinion of the majority is sometimes, but always reflected in policy change. So the students are asked, explain how interest groups reduce the influence of public opinion on policy. B, explain how each of the following increases the likelihood of policy change: a newly elected president or a national crisis. And C, describe the role of each of the following institutions in the policy process: the courts and the media. And these are this is a link to the answers that are provided that the graders of these tests are supposed to use to help them grade the students' answers. Because the students take this test, they write out their answer, and then the grades are sent to people like me or whoever volunteer, or we get paid, I think, to grade these tests nationally. So let's see how you did. Let me divide you up into groups, and groups of 3. And so, Anais, so please join the groups. Anais and Joe Eugene, please join room 1. Chung Dujin and Kirill Amorsky join room 2. And Juliet and Kim Pyong-Koo join room 3. Please join those groups. Anais, Joe Eugene. And I would like group 1 to answer A, explain how interest groups reduce the influence of public opinion on public policy. Group 2, do B, explain how each of the following increased the likelihood of policy change: newly elected president or national crisis. And room 3, describe the role of each of the following institutions in the policy process: the courts and the media. So back to the breakout rooms.
Sir, excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you send the question in the chat so we can keep them during our exchange, please?
Okay. So let me.
Thanks.
Let me first. This. What did I do? I screwed it up. One more time. I wanted to change the name of the. Let me put in the chat. Okay, so I was going to try to change the name. So room 1 do A. So let me see if I can do this here. So, okay, so please join the groups. So Anais and Joe Eugene join room 1. And Chung Eugene, where did Micah go? Somebody left. Who's that? Juliet? Yeah. Micah, we'll put you in room 2. Okay, that way we have somebody work with Chung Eugene. So Anais and Cho Eugene do A, Chung Eugene and Micah do B, and Juliet and Kim Pyeong do C. And let's see what you come up with. You compare your answers to what American students typically write. And back to screen here. So and I will heads. I will do A. And it's heads. So I will explain also.
Sir,
Yeah.
excuse me, can you send me back in the room? Because I was with Micah, I think, but then I was alone, so I didn't get to go in any room.
Which one? Who are you, Micah?
Oh, no, Juliet.
You're in room 3. You don't want to be in room 3?
No, I wasn't in room 3. I found myself with Micah, and then she left, and now I'm alone. I was alone.
What about Kim Pyeong-koo? You with Kim Pyeong-koo?
Yeah, but I didn't see him on the.
Kim
in the
Pyeong-koo,
room.
are you there?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
in the same
Talk
room
to
as
Juliet.
him.
Talk to Juliet. Kim Pyeong-koo. Join the group. Join room 3.
Yeah, but can you just like send the link again so I can join it?
I put in the chat. It's in the chat. Can you see it?
No, I mean the chat, there are the questions, but I can't go in the room if you don't invite me again.
Oh, so put you in room. You're supposed to join room 3.
Yeah, I would like to. I tried, but then I was alone, so I came back here, and now I'm just asking you to send me back, please.
Which one?
Never mind.
I can put you in 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Kim Pyeong-koo, I work with Kim Pyeong-koo. All right. Room 3. I can't really join the group, but I'll write a describe the each of the following institutions in the policy process. Regulations. Policy implementation. Framework. Policy legislation. Adopted. By the Congress. And media. We should decide who's going to speak. So Kim Pyeong-koo will speak for room 3. Heads, it's Cho Eugene for room 1. If it is tails, Anais will speak for room 1. And room 2. Okay, so prepare to help each other, help your first speaker prepare to present your answer. So media plays. Media, that's a big topic later on in the semester when you're reading about the media fragmentation, social media. By mobilizing who? Constituencies, various constituencies. Pressure and lobby. Their congressional representatives. That seems to be a more important role because the media, because this is from 2018, so the social media is important, but that's a big theme in the reading in the book, the textbook, that the media has become so fragmented and divided with the digital internet and the rise of social media. I mean, there are infinite sources of information and disinformation and misinformation and falsehoods on the media. I mean, on available to anybody who has a computer, right? And so you can always find somebody pretending to be a news source saying or declaring or opinionating from a point of view that I like. So I don't have to change my views. I have an incentive to find somebody who can validate and confirm what I want to believe anyway, because there's an infinite number of so-called news sources or information, misinformation sources available. And one of the functions that we see with the development of particularly social media and the internet more broadly is the mobilization and fragmentation of American public opinion. It might well happen in Europe. It might be beginning in Britain as we speak. I just read something in the media about that yesterday, that the role of the media has changed to become more a source of mobilization rather than a source of a conduit by which to mediate between the authorities and the public to try to legitimate policy processes. It's rather more focused upon, rather than legitimating policy outcomes of the policy process, rather mobilizing your allies against the perceived threat from the hated other that you see or we see as threats to fundamental, critically important values. That's why, for example, we have all these killings in the United States, these mass shootings. Every day there are mass shootings in the United States, and the political system in the United States is unable to address it because of the conflicting political pressures that immobilize the American government to act. I mean, any kind of explanation of why the United States is unable to carry out any kind of effective gun regulation policies, to adopt new gun regulation policies in the form of policy change, has to include the role of social media. Media are fragmented, and so American opinion is a fragmented. Okay. I mean, you have to remember, when I was a child, there were 3 television networks: American Broadcasting Company, National Broadcasting Company, and the Columbia Broadcasting System. So everybody got their television news from 3 sources until cable news network emerged, CNN emerged in 1980. So from my childhood, everybody got their information from 3 television sources. Even the radio systems were part of networks. There were many newspapers, not online internet sources, newspapers. You had to buy the paper and you'd read the paper, and you could not immediately respond, obviously the way you can today on the computer. So today, 50 years later, we have infinite amounts of sources of information, or misinformation, or slanted information, or biased information, or just outright lies and falsehoods, conspiracy theories about the Jewish Freemason QAnon conspiracies, whatever that are out there. And I can find a so-called source of information that I like. And I can find other people on social media that confirm and reflect my own preferences and validate what I believe, because I can find other people on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram who share the same view I share. And somebody who claims to be a smart person who also is saying what I want to hear. So let's hear what you have to say. And we have 1 minute. So who's going to speak first? Annalise? Heads. Before, because I think something might happen with the audio if this is when the rooms are open. Like, can you hear me through your computers when I'm speaking? When the rooms are open?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Because I think somebody said there was some kind of problem when you're closing the rooms. But anyway. Okay, so Anais, what answer do you have to this first? Explain how interest groups reduce the influence of public opinion on policy. Please.
Interest groups have more influence over the government, as they also have resources or money. And some interest groups, they also have power over the public opinion, as the citizens are willing to listen and follow to their every word.
And who else is in the group? That is, and Joe Jean, do you have anything to add? Joe Jean? Go ahead.
Yes, Professor. I think we should study the relationship between interest groups, examine their influence, and reflect it in the survey.
I think partly also we want to think about, what do you understand to be public opinion? Is public opinion survey results? For example, most Americans favor abortion access, legal abortion access. 2/3, at least 2/3, or even more than 2/3 of Americans do not want abortion to be made illegal. But we're going to see Roe versus Wade overturned probably next month, and many states are going to make abortion illegal. Even though, according to public opinion surveys and polls like Gallup survey, 2/3, at least 2/3 of Americans who respond in those public opinion surveys do not want abortion made illegal. What happened? Why is this happening? Part of the answer has to be these interest groups. As I said, most Americans are not intensely focused upon public affairs, upon politics. And so as a consequence, they are not the main focus of politicians seeking to win election, who have to win primary elections and then the general election, in which in primary elections, maybe 20–25% of people eligible to vote will vote, 75% will not. Who votes? The militants, the radicals, the people that are intensely interested, and they tend to be ideologically more extreme, left or right. And then even in general elections, like in this upcoming election for Congress, I will doubt that more than 55%, 50% of people will vote. About half voters will not bother to vote in November. So yeah, public opinion surveys say, oh yeah, I think that Roe versus Wade should not be overturned. Yeah. But how does that affect the election outcomes? Election outcomes means focusing on interest groups and parties, not on public opinion surveys, although public opinion surveys are important. I mean, most Americans, they want some kind of restrictions on guns, but it doesn't get passed by the US Congress because these congressmen know what they have to do to keep their jobs and what would do to lose their jobs. And that means these interest groups that are organizing those groups of people that are really intensely focused on public policy issues. When most Americans, like I said, 1/4 of American women, 25% have had an abortion, but 75% have not. Okay, so back to the and it's heads. Micah. Explain how each of the following increases the likelihood of policy change. A newly elected president, national crisis.
Okay, so we talked about how a newly elected president has his own agenda when first starting his term, has its own priorities, its own policy objectives. So naturally the policy might change compared to, for example, the previous president. And then also during a national crisis, the government needs to adapt and needs to change some policy. So it also may happen that the policy changes, so it can adapt properly and react to the crisis. So that's kind of a natural thing to happen. For example, during COVID, policies changed, and then also, and then Juliette also said that during the 1930s and the New Deal, for example, was also a policy change because it was for economic reasons. So yeah.
I guess in terms of adding on to what Micah said, of course, a newly elected president doesn't have to worry about an election until the next congressional election 2 years later. And they typically describe those first 100 days of a newly elected president as providing greater political capability or opportunity to have legislation passed through Congress, because the memory of the voters is pretty short, right? Like we said here, these people, they typically are not going to respond to events that happened a year and a half ago. They're going to evaluate their condition or their situation in terms of what's happened last month. So if Joe Biden can get inflation down, say within the next 6 months, and keep unemployment from rising, maybe the Democratic Party will do better. Then people will forget or don't recall or don't really care about how desperate the world situation was when Joe Biden became president in January 2021. And so, but also the crisis has limitations. I mean, Joe Biden was also campaigning when he was running for president that the most economically generally favorable policy that he was advocating was to fix the infrastructure, rebuild the roads, the airports, the seaports of the United States that were underinvested compared to, for example, what you see in Europe and what you see in China and South Korea and even in China and Japan, and I should say in China as well. And so that passed. That infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill passed. But Biden was also campaigning what was called his Build Back Better, BBB, Build Back Better program, which included elements of the Green New Deal advocated by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders to encourage and transform the U.S. economy away from fossil fuels. And Joe Biden campaigned on that and was advocating that and required that this be a focus because he was claiming the world was looking to the United States to provide leadership on environmental change after 4 years of Donald Trump denying that climate change was really a serious problem. And he still couldn't get it passed because he didn't have enough support in US Congress to even get all of the Democratic senators. The big focus has been on Joe Manchin, the senator, Democratic senator from West Virginia, a big coal and gas state, will not support Build Back Better. So there are limits to what the US president can do, but also it relates to this understanding of how do you define what crisis is? I mean, the pandemic, that's a crisis. People can see at least people going to the hospitals. They can see people getting sick. They can see on the news the consequences of the disease. But how do you explain climate change as a crisis to people? People in the academic field or scientists or media specialists can highlight how there's more and more hurricanes, there's more and more droughts, there's more and more fires. But again, most people in the United States don't pay close attention to those issues. And they don't clearly see or want to understand that what's going on in India with this terrible heat wave that's destroying the agriculture production in India today, reducing the wheat production in India, even as the war in Ukraine and Russia is restricting wheat exports from the biggest source of exported wheat, one of the biggest sources in the world from the Ukraine and Russia. They don't understand or really focus that much or care. What they do care about is the fact that their gasoline prices are high. And that the Republicans are claiming that Joe Biden's pro-environmental policies are making gasoline prices for your car higher than they need to be. So how do we find what crisis is? Typically, it's a crisis whereby people view themselves as physically in danger. We've been attacked by the Japanese. We're being killed by the virus. The hospitals are being overrun. I can't go to a hospital and get my treatment for my problems because the hospital's overwhelmed with COVID patients. People can understand that, but crisis in the form of climate change? Yeah, among that elite, that minority at the top of the political system, yeah, they can understand that. They can maybe, if they want to, but these people down here, they can't even find India on a map. Not to mention Ukraine or Russia. And they vote in elections, or they may not vote in elections. Okay, and back to Chung Do-jin. Do you have anything to add? Chung Do-jin.
Yes, Professor.
Okay.
I think the newly elected president, in the case that the newly elected president is also in a current ruling parties, their there will be an inevitable to change his policies to in court with the current situations about the national crisis, like the COVID-19 situation or the economical depressions. So there would be the change of policies regardless of any situations.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So as Micah already say, I agree with all the fact that a new president and crisis define.
Okay. And Kim Pyong-koo for the third part. About the role of the courts and the media in the policy process.
I think in court, there will be various participants interacting each other in the policy making process. And I think court can play an important role in a policy making process, such as policy making or policy execution.
Okay. And what about media?
And media could play a role to informing the people of the process of policy making, so that a lot of people could indirectly participate in the political process. I think, but some media could provide people with incorrect information, like biased information. But I think in most cases, people could easily participate in politics indirectly by getting information from media. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I need to shut down the classroom computer so I can save this file and convert it and save it. So I'm going to transition to my laptop now. So stand by.